Do we all want to go around and introduce ourselves? So I have Catherine on the screen next to me. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Hale. I'm Director of Residential Life at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. So small art and design school, and attended the SHO small college meeting at the conference this summer, and wanted to get more involved in this monthly due. So thank you. Let's see, Angela, or do you want to?
No, that works. I like it that way.
Hi, I'm Angela Ward. I'm the Director of Housing and Residence Life at the University of West Alabama in rural, small West Alabama here. So I'm going to pass on to Molly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Kinney. I'm Director of Residence Life at University of Colorado Springs. So I attended a meeting earlier this summer, and then unfortunately just haven't been able to, just had calendar conflicts. So today's been like the first month that I've been able to come. So I'm happy to be here.
Shalonda, did I say that right?
Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Shalonda, and I'm a res hall manager at Jackson College in Michigan, and just was looking through some of the Akuro Eye offerings and seemed like this would be a good thing to connect to. This is my first time at a smaller school, and so wanted to make those connections.
Hey everybody, I'm Jake McLean. I'm the Assistant Dean for Campus Life at Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, like kind of West Central Illinois. I've been at Knox for like almost 3 years, but I started like neck deep during the pandemic, so it feels like I've been here for 1,000 years. Yeah, happy to be here and be connected.
Well, welcome everybody. There were 2 questions submitted. So why don't we start with those, and then of course if you guys have anything that you're working on or you need help with, or you just want to like put it out there for everybody to hear, we can definitely do that too. Is that okay? Okay, so first one is ADA accommodations. I want to talk through some of what folks do and do not do. What do you guys do for ADA accommodations?
I'll jump in first. I'm best friends with my, out of necessity, with our Disability Support Services Director. We meet weekly about everything. Single room accommodations are like through the roof. I'm sure like most of you, we have a zoo growing on campus with all of the ESAs and other things like that. Small school life, we have a lot of deferred maintenance to most of our buildings, and so this year especially we're seeing more limitations for students with mobility challenges and being able to accommodate them on campus. Yeah, the previous housing director works in a different position here at the college. I think last served in the role like, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. And just the amount of accommodation things have skyrocketed since his time. And so I meet weekly with the Disability Support Services Office just to make sure that we've got everybody accounted for and that they have what they need residentially to be supported. I really defer to her expertise, her authority on how to make sure that people have what they need in the residence hall spaces. But then logistically, we work together through like documentation and all of that stuff.
Anybody else? Do some of you work with accessibility services or accommodations, or do you not because of where you fall in the role? Like, does it come out of residence life? Is it a partnership? What does it look like?
Yeah, I was nodding along with Jake. That's essentially our model at Pratt as well. And we also have a ton of accommodations. So our disability services is called the Learning Access Center. They're in the Division of Student Affairs, as are we, obviously. So it's a partnership and like a weekly meeting, but they apply through LAC. And so they're evaluating their you know, disability, their needs, and then we're working together to find the accommodation that would work. So a lot of the one thing that I think we did that was new this year that was kind of useful was to run not separate, but we did the housing accommodation room selection first, and it was a partnered process in terms of somebody from the LAC and somebody from, you know, Res Life and Housing meeting with each of those students to make sure they understood what their choices were and what would work. And that worked fairly well. I mean, pretty labor intensive process all around that relationship, but very similar in that we defer to them for the judgments. And, you know, we try to set mutual timelines and communicate really clearly with the students about what their choices are and what the process is.
When you're doing it early or like before other assignments, did that help with, ours is very similar, I'm Marissa. But question, because that sounds really interesting. Did you say like you have to have your information in by this deadline for accommodations?
Yep.
And then you house based on that, and if you submitted late, you might not get it?
Then they were just kind of on a wait list. So they would, you know, have to pick a double room and, you know, so yes, they were approved for a single, but they didn't automatically get preference for that single. They were just sort of in with everybody else for it. But it allowed us to, I mean, we knew we needed to give these folks single rooms. And so it was just, before it was a little awkward of like, oh, well, you're sort of in this special pool of rooms, you know, doing it first. But yeah, they had to meet that deadline. They were given a lot of support in meeting the deadline because oftentimes, you know, they're impacted by other issues. So yeah, it worked fairly well. Still a little bit of tension of like, but I'm approved. We don't magically have a room for you. You still have to wait. So.
Okay, because that sounds, so we already have a deadline at Morrisville for the ESAs because we have to make sure that like we have accommodations also for the animal, like space, not accommodations, but space. Hi, Stephen. I'll let you and Patrick introduce yourselves in a minute, I promise. The question we're working on right now is ADA accommodations and how you work with that in the halls. The two new ones for Morrisville, I don't know if anybody else had these, is like food allergies is like through the roof. And they have to have accommodations like a freezer, full refrigerator, and I'm like, what the hell? As someone with major food allergies who went to college and had these accommodations, I just had to make it work and work with the food service people. And then religion. Muslims needing to have prayer time. Even though we have two facilities on campus, they want to have it in their room. So we don't ask a religious question on our application. So it's actually like wondering if we can, but we're a state school, so we were told we can't. But partnering people up that have the same requests did work a little bit, but it was very difficult with those two things going higher in numbers. And then the students with the food allergies thinking because they have a food allergy that automatically grants them a single. That was like mind blowing. But anyways, Stephen, Patrick, do you guys want to introduce yourselves? And do you have any input on ADA accommodations and wanting to talk it through with other folks?
Hi, my name is Stephen Corres. I'm the Director of Residential Life at St. Peter's University in Jersey City, New Jersey, just a few minutes away from Manhattan.
All right, definitely lunch right now that I want to eat in front of you. Patrick Bender, University of Richmond, in Richmond, Virginia. And I caught the tail end of talking disabilities. I actually just crossed paths with our director because we have two that are interesting issues right now that we keep working through. So I'm not sure what it said. We meet monthly to go through things, and we used to have what was known as a housing accommodations committee. When our new director came on, they disbanded that because there was people that were on the committee that they weren't exactly coming to the table with an open mind or a clear direction on what an accommodation should be or needed to be, or if a student needed one. And now with some staffing changes, we're going to be reintroducing that. So it's super helpful. but I think I heard you say, Elizabeth, something about food allergies equates to an automatic single. We have students who think that as well, but you're going to have peanuts wherever you go on campus, in the classroom, and all sorts of things. And so that's where we have our person from our student health center that will speak more clearly and clinically with the parents or the clinician who's requesting that, saying you need to be realistic about what cross contamination can be anywhere, everywhere on campus. Because me, I'm a peanut M&M fan, so they're always in my office and around. So there you go. So, but I'm not sure what else was said. So I'll stop. I'm rambling now.
This was gluten. This girl like swears she deserves a single because she's allergic to gluten. I'm allergic to gluten. I have celiac. It's fine. You just don't need it. And if you have to, like, if you have an issue that you're airborne, then okay, that's fine. There's only a few people, by the way. But most of the time you have to like take it in or put it on your skin to have a reaction. And this girl like lost her gosh forsaken mind on me. Anyways, moving on. It was very entertaining. Oh, by the way, just for anybody, Patrick's statement was, are we having fun yet? Smiles. Because Patrick's here now, so I thought I would share his question, quote unquote. Did anybody else have anything else with ADA accommodations, or is everybody kind of on the same page that like you have a joint team that works with residents life and accessibility, and they have to do the paperwork, and it goes from there kind of thing, and that all of us have like way more requests than we have rooms for because we're not Harry Potter with wands?
The only thing I was gonna say is the thing that's nice about Jackson College is we only have singles. So but there's single, so but it's suite style living, so everyone gets their own bedroom within a suite. So that helps a lot. The only thing that we've just been trying to navigate or just find some adjustment is just as we get ESA requests. Because then, and right now, since we're not at capacity, we still have the ability to, if we need to like shift people or move people, because usually the ESA requests come in on a rolling basis, or like as students start to get into the semester, especially when they're first year, and then just working to see like will we be able to make that accommodation in their current assignment, because if you have somebody in the suite that has an allergy, or maybe even a fear based on what the ESA is, just managing those, because we want to be careful that if somebody asks for accommodation, we're not like, well, you got to move somewhere else, because and so just trying to but yeah, we work with our abilities.
Everybody's eyes lit up when you said singles. I mean, I did say suites, so you can still have conflict, but not probably as much.
Yeah. I was like, oh, at my previous institution that wasn't the case, but yes, I am enjoying everybody has a single, so that kind of we don't have that.
So the last question I have, and then we can do anything anybody wants to talk about. We're looking to explore how students prefer to use lounges, lobby, common spaces. Oh, thank you, Patrick. And your residence halls. So with everybody now being this issue we're having in residence life, I did not put this question in. One of my friends did, and I was like, I'm right on the same page as you. No one wants to come to like programming in the lounge anymore. They want us to do, because during COVID we did cart programming where we like pushed a cart around, did ice cream sundaes at your door, coloring things that, you know what I mean, like we did the programming to the students. So they're like, why can't we still do that? And I'm like, you're a freshman, you don't know when we ever did that, so like why are you acting like this? And I said that to my freshman the other day. Oh well. So we have Swank, so that's getting people to our lounges because they'll come and watch movies and stuff. And like right now we're doing like Horror Fest USA, which I will not be going to watch any of them, but the students are loving it because it's Halloween. I will be excited when I saw that in November Elf rolls out in Swank. I'll be on that one. But we've been doing movie things and we've been doing a lot of paint and sips, and that's got our students to the lounges. Like a board game night doesn't get a student to a lounge. I don't know if that helps, but what do you guys do to get students to your lounge?
I mean, kind of weirdly, the last couple of years, students have been very into pool and ping pong and foosball, in a really intense way that is new-ish. So having that there has been helpful. But I'm curious, I mean, kind of adjacent to that question, if anyone's explored, it's one of those small school, big school things, right? Because you hear these fancy ideas like bandied about that the university of thousands of people can do. Like those pod ideas, so folks can have a private space to do like teletherapy or, even, I've heard the idea that's supportive of students with autism to have like a calm down space, like a non-sensory kind of space, especially if they have doubles. I'm just curious if anybody has repurposed lounge space to be not communal or to have some non-communal space too. But get a cheap pool table. They seem to love it. I don't know.
Kevin, this is Patrick. So we do have some single private use study rooms that we allow students to book for scheduling, similar to what our library does. And so we are finding our students that are utilizing that for therapy, but also for alone time, downtime. And we partner with our wellness center because I don't want to put those pods in the residence halls because we'd be responsible for cleaning them. So they're in open public areas within our gym. And we actually also, because of a huge donor, have a salt room on campus. So they're right in that area where our students will go to that and utilize it and shut down. But we don't put those in the residence halls. But I did turn our small private study rooms, which are like 2 tops and 4 tops, to reservable for one person to go into if they needed to utilize it.
I would think about doing study rooms because that is one request we've had. That's a good idea.
I was trying to see if anybody subdivided out their spaces, because we do have like some really big lounges that it would be nice to try to make smaller.
All of our lounges are they're not big. We have multiple ones in some of the buildings, so I don't think it would be hard to make it more of a study space. And like even talking to the students, do you still want a couch with like the table that comes over the arm, or do you want tables in the study room? And like we could flip a couple to be more study lounges and some be more social gatherings. But like I also want to make sure I have the right furniture in the study rooms, because when we have like a study room that's just tables and chairs and no one wants to go in there because it's not like welcoming and comfortable. Well, that's not true. In our nursing building, they love it. They have 4 tables that they can put together, and sometimes they do that, and they like around midterms and finals, and they have a good old time. They took over one of our buildings, like not on purpose, but every year all the students from nursing second year live in the same building, like when they do housing selection. So they love it down there. Anybody else have any ideas for how to draw students in and also how to, or ideas to change? I like the study room idea.
I was gonna say, I know with our RA programming, like we encourage our RAs to have their initial their community building programs on those floors. And so or in those lounge spaces too, to kind of make students more aware that those spaces are available. So like we do paint night and we have pumpkin painting coming up, but they did vision boards. So with their initial first few weeks of programming, they utilize those spaces to kind of be like, hey, this is where people may be at, when you're looking for people. But a lot of our lounge spaces, well, actually all of our lounge spaces are open spaces. So they're like part of the hallway. I would love to have you all come here and see, because I just think the way the residence halls are set up here is a very, it's a very good model. But I will also say, and so our students tend to naturally gather because they are open spaces. So they're like right in the hallway and they're just like, oh, okay, I see people sitting there. They're not like behind closed doors. But at my previous institutions where they were more bigger spaces behind kind of closed doors, I will say I felt like initially the residents, because we did have doubles and triples and things like that, they liked those spaces not being overly utilized because it was a space where they could, like, you know, get away from their rooms and kind of go there. Nobody else is there because, you know, the spaces weren't being overutilized. But I like the idea of the pods, you know, when you do have bigger spaces to make it feel a little more private place to get away.
We do see that like in 2 of our halls, they're still being used a lot, but that's all my halls that have like set doubles. And I think it's that escape. Like, I'm going to go find a corner in this big room and be left alone to do something. Some of them just sit there and watch TikTok. I walked in the other day, there were 4 different students in 4 different areas of the room, all watching TikTok or something on their phone. I was like, y'all good? The one had a blanket and everything. She looked like she was about ready to take a nap down there. And I was like, you're okay? She's like, yeah, this couch is just more comfortable. My roommate's doing her homework. I don't want to bother. I'm like, okay. We have made sure all of our lounges are really comfortable with furniture, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because we do find students now sleeping in them sometimes. But it is what it is. Are there any other questions anybody has? Or anything anybody's working on that they would love, like, some insight on? Patrick, are you thinking or yawning? Get his face covered.
I'm thinking, it's just one thing that we are working with a lot of state colleagues on. I'm not sure who on this call has what gender inclusive housing, gender neutral housing, or gender flexible housing. We're just working through like our STARS portal, which we use to try to figure out ways to have students who want to be a part of gender flexible housing, which is what we call it, be able to have more freedom within the portal to have access to like matching roommates of any gender, any sex, because the way the system is set up to use it, it's based on your birth sex. So we're trying to find ways to work the software a little bit, so it's a little more flexible. Right now we have our Lavender Living community, which has about 16 students in for gender flexible housing. We have about 3 apartments and 2 suites, so that's 20 students. So our numbers aren't very high. We're kind of like 36, 40 students out of our 2,800. But we're talking with schools that have, 200 to 300 students in gender flexible housing. What we try to do is to be super flexible, where they have the ability to choose suites, rooms, just like any other student is going through room selection. But I know some schools say, if you're interested in this, this is your building, this is your floor, this is your area. And we don't want to be restricted that way. So if anyone has any input or thoughts or ideas or things that you're doing, that would be awesome to hear too.
I would love to know how you get the software to let it so that they can talk to our students, because that was the hiccup we had this year. Mm-hmm. So if you can ever find out that one, let me know. We recommend specific housing areas, but we don't, it gives you every option. So we recommend, like, we have, my favorite building is Fountain View on campus. All the bathrooms are gender inclusive. It's singles, doubles, and triples with a wall 2/3 the way down for privacy inside the room. So you don't have to look at the person sleeping, is what I always tell them. A lot of our students overall pick that building because of that. But then we have students that, we had a couple of students this fall that wanted to be in a traditional double. And so I made sure that they had gender inclusive bathrooms like I said, I gave them we had 4 buildings they could pick from. And they had already found somebody that had marked similar things on their application, so they were able to talk to that person, but like it didn't give them a ton of people to talk to. So thank God, fingers crossed, it's been working great. They are wonderful together. But I would love to be able to make it so the application would have an option that, like, just because you're straight or not straight or whatever, but you want to live with somebody and you don't care, that they could do that. That's kind of where we're stuck right now. Our population is very small also of the people that have like identified with us and have wanted specific housing because of it. We have a large population on campus, but they kind of like do their own thing, and if they have a housing issue, they can let us know, but most of the time they're good.
So I just have a follow-up question, I guess, because we ran into an issue, and I'm sort of, if I hearing you right, and maybe others can chime in too. For your gender inclusive housing, they don't have to live in a private, well, I guess maybe maybe not all of your institutions have singles. We have all suite style living, but not all single bedrooms. So we have some shared suites, but then we do have some single private rooms. There's only one person obviously assigned to the space, but and I don't necessarily, the assignments is handled by our housing operations team, but this is really good feedback for me to provide them. Is we actually had an incident where we had a student who was, I'm going to say this wrong, but I think male to female transitioning, but didn't select gender inclusive housing, and then marked their birth gender as female on the application, and everything matched. So they were placed with women, and it's kind of caused some issues that it kind of has come up. So if they don't mark gender inclusive housing, then they do the assignments based off birth gender. What is listed comes over from our campus software. So, but in talking with our housing assignment folks, they had expressed that it often creates a financial burden because they only allow, and I don't know if this is maybe, I think this could be a campus policy, so I have to get some clarification on that. But right now, if someone selects gender inclusive housing, it's all in singles in a suite. You can't do it in a shared space. But it's sounding like what I'm hearing from other schools, you all do allow that, like to have a shared bedroom for gender inclusive housing. Okay.
Our area has like basic doubles. Like we don't have like, we have it so that they can mark any sex. They can even mark other. And when they mark gender inclusive, it gives them a pool because of to talk to somebody. But I would love to give them more of a pool. But they can be in doubles with a shared living space. They can be in triples. They can be in apartments. Like we're kind of in the same place with Patrick, where we don't want to limit them and just give them a single, because then they don't have that social environment and things of that nature. And they actually want to live with somebody most of the time. We've had a couple of students when they haven't filled out the housing application properly, because I do operations and Friends Life at my job. I've been housed, like say they are born female, transitioning to male. If they only put female on their application and don't put anything else like other, gender inclusive, anything like that, and then they get a housing assignment, most of the time they call me because their housing assignments go out July 1st. We have a conversation. And at that time they tell me, no, I'm transitioning to male, we will talk about different options of housing, but they still could live with. Oh, I like that. Sorry, I just watched Patrick put a message. But they still,
I'm just dropping things in the chat. I'll chime in. So we added this last year because in our software, it allows students to search, and they can rate the criteria of the questions and how much they want to weight those questions. So if we have students who are looking for roommates that are LGBT affirming and how they want to be housed, like they could isolate their questions to their best match based on these 3 and say, I don't care about when you go to bed, if it's midnight, 2 a.m. I don't care if you smoke or not. Like we still have all those things in there, but we added these as an additional search option for students, specifically for our entering first year students. But as Elizabeth was saying, the only time I ever go to a single is if I have a true one-off situation where I can't find a match or pair. And if all of you or any of you are using the Common App now, there is the ability in the Common App that you could work with your admission team to get how students have their birth sex, their gender identity, and their pronouns compared to how you have it on your housing application. We do that as soon as admission, hits their go button on May 1 for who's in the class. So we can see when the applications start rolling in June, how people are identifying, and it allows us to reach out to those students in advance and say, hey, we have all these resources on campus, just as a general kind of umbrella email to them for them to be able to like go down the path of, do I want gender flexible housing? Do I want to connect with our student center for equity and inclusion? Like we start just with that extra information, providing them with more so that they can go down a more guided path and ask questions versus us going to them and saying, you may want this. It kind of just opens the door for them to think about it some more.
So you have Star Res, you said, right?
Yes.
Because we're just starting that process of I don't know, selling our souls, I guess, to them.
5 an hour.
Yeah. So the questions you listed, because we had those similar questions on our previous platform, those questions are the ones that would help students find the roommates they're looking for.
Yeah, because they're able to go in, and I think now we're up to like 17 questions. We're trying to keep it under 20 because I don't want to get to be too much. And they can wait. What's the importance? I mean, somebody could be like, it could be an election year, and they're like, I am not living with somebody, that's X, and they weight that at the highest they can, So, or it could be, we know our biggest issue with the roommate problems are around drinking and overnight guests. So we always are looking at the criteria. So they're never more than 1 or 2 off on the Likert scale when we're matching them with roommates from the beginning anyway. Because I don't want someone who says drinking all the time is wonderful, I'm going to do it 7 days a week, versus someone's like drinking is unnecessary. Those two are never going to come together in our system. The way we can filter the criteria so that if they answer it on the Likert scale of 5, I drink all the time, to 0, never, then the only time I would have anybody is maybe a 3 and a 5 or 4 and a 5 would be rooming together. So
that's interesting, because we have seen a trend in more people who I would have assumed would be interested in gender inclusive housing, not preference it. And so I think to have a broader way of describing who you want to live with and how you want to live, I like that idea. Thank you for sharing that.
This is awesome. I'm going to do like a little, yes, you sell your soul, but moving on. Just make sure you have a team to implement it. We didn't do that at my college. It was just me. It's a lot of hours. So that's just my only feedback for anybody. And yes, Star Rise already knows how I feel, and so does my technology service department. But it has worked wonders. And yes, I love that it does the weighting. Because then when the application comes through for you to read it, you can see like what they value more than other things. Also, it gives them ways to talk to each other too.
Yeah.
Anything else anybody has any questions about?
One other thing we did that helped us last summer, and we're continuing this summer, is we did anonymous Zoom roommate interests for gender flexible housing for incoming first years, because we've identified and seen that our incoming first years, because they don't know anybody else, it allows them to get into a Zoom and privately chat with everybody that's in that Zoom for them to make connections that way. And we don't see anybody who's on it. They put a complete different alias up, and that assisted in 3 out of our pairings this past year, which was good. So
we did some. similar, but it had basically like anybody who had that, what you were describing is you may want this housing option, or who had wanted gender inclusive housing, basically emailed them directly to say, like, describing what it was again. And then if this sounds interesting to you, let us know, and then put them in like a Google chat that they could, just go back and forth and try to get to know each other. But the Zoom idea is interesting too. So, because to have first year students find a compatible roommate in terms of gender, I think has been really helpful. Upper class students is sort of a free for all, and that's fine.
Patrick, did you see so I'm talking, you're talking about the roommate matching tool that's in StarRes. So did you find that you had less roommate conflicts once you started using that? No? Okay, I wondered.
Absolutely not. I mean, even people that were besties as a freshman show up as sophomores and want to rip each other's hair out. Our numbers haven't changed, but I mean, what we did see, with our first years is our percentage of students who are matching ahead of time has increased. I mean, we're looking at somewhere between like anywhere from 64 to 68% of our incoming first years are matching versus those that are going in random now. So
we saw the same thing. This was our first year with StarRes and doing that. And our percentage went from 44 to, I have it on the wall over here, 53%. So less people that we had to randomly match based on criteria. So it was very beneficial. Because honestly,
you get to college and you may not drink in high school, but the first few weekends things change, and all of a sudden people are like, I don't like you anymore. So the honeymoon phase does end. So
it made it so the parents weren't as involved either. Like, that was a nice change because the students were able to talk. Because you're not going to want to talk to another parent if the parent filled out the application. So
that is the good thing about the StarRes portal is if I were a student and I saw Elizabeth's profile, I could send her a message through the portal. And you could answer back to the portal, or I could send you all my handles and then you can reach back to me that way. And that's what our students do. And it does eliminate the parents from being able to see it because they can't access the portal. So.
And then the ones that do access it somehow, because their kid gives them everything, if a parent if they reach out to a parent, all of a sudden I'll get a call like, hey, I wanted to talk to so-and-so, but I only have the mom's information and I don't want to talk to her. So that I had 2 of those calls this summer. It was really funny. But we got them connected and it worked out. But I do like that the students get to do more of it, because I hate when move-in happens and you match up 2 people because they didn't match with anybody, and then the parents are like, well, I filled out the application. And I'm like, yeah, you said your kid was clean, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, goes to bed at 9 o'clock. Your kid is a party flipping animal, smokes like a fiend, not just tobacco, and yeah, they go to bed at 3 if we're lucky. So it's very entertaining. Anything? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at all the notes. Anything else?
So not related to gender inclusive housing, but I'm just curious from you all, as we are starting to plan for winter break closure. Do you all collect your room keys from your students? We do have a card access system, but that has been a big source of opposition that has been in place since I started here, that we always collect keys at the end of fall. And the rationale is that because we have, even though there's card swipe and we can turn off the card swipe, that there's so many doors to each building that, one door could easily get propped and then somebody would be able to have access to their space and we wouldn't know it, and a concern for safety and things like that, somebody getting into the room and doing something or harming themselves. So I just was curious, because that was not my experience at any other institution I worked at, but the people that I also work with here said every other school they've worked at all collected keys. So I was just curious to get some feedback. And so how do you manage the safety then of your buildings if to prevent something. You don't collect keys, but you turn off card access if a prop door happens. Like you just have people on rounds, like just check it at night.
We still have a pro staff that does rounds, so we don't collect keys. We shut off swipes. We still have physical plant in the buildings during the day. We still have a pro staff on call, and we still have an RA if they're here. Because like we have animals that have to be taken care of, like legit horses, cows, stuff like that. So we have a lot of animal majors. So they'll stay because it's free housing. And so part of their staying is they get a stipend and they do rounds. So there's a round done in every building twice a day, between physical plant and our Res Life staff. And we just make sure doors aren't popped. Also, we have University Police that is here over breaks, and they do walkthroughs, drive around, stuff like that. So if there's a door propped open, they would unprop it. Our issue is more on the other end. Students that are dismissed in between semesters. At the end of the appeal date, if they're not approved to come back, we do change their lock core. But that's only like a handful of students versus anything else. So we also still have athletes on campus over winter break, and they're in every hall. We don't just put them into one building. We have students that have a home insecurities or foster care. We still probably have 100 students.
Yeah, we do allow. Yeah.
We only hold 1,200 anyways, but we probably still have 100 students on campus any given day over like a winter break.
Yeah, we still have our apartments stay open and we do offer winter break housing, and we have pro staff on call and RAs on call. We don't have a front desk in every building. We are a centralized system, or we have a front desk in one village in each of the 2 villages that we have. So I think that's also, but it just is a different kind of thing. So just curious to know about other schools might, if you don't collect keys, have you ever had any issues with a student coming back and trying to get into their space?
Nope. That's why we did during move-in, we would have people that were denied to be on campus because of grades. That's why we changed those few lock cores. But we don't have people showing up over winter break without like calling us, or they'll get here and their swipe doesn't work. And they'll be like, I need to get my outfit for New Year's Eve. And I'll be like, we told you to pack it before you left. You know, we'll have like random 1 or 2 people over winter break. We had a guy one time, he had to get his army stuff because he got called up. And well, that makes sense. Like you weren't expecting he called up over winter break. So he called us ahead of time. But most of the time our students want to go home. And the ones that don't want to go home are staying with us anyways. So we really don't have that issue. And our campus is pretty secure because we do have University Police that does drive rounds, walk arounds every night. We have staff here. I have an RD or a pro staff area coordinator living in almost every residence hall. So
it just is a big burden on staff. We end up doing a lot. It feels like we end up doing a lot of lock changes because the key gets hung on the wrong hook and they can't find it. And then, you know, someone's got to spend time doing key audits and things like that. So I just was curious to see how, you know, just to share that information back up with the folks that are sort of not interested in making that change.
I mean, alternatively, like we don't close. I mean, isn't that, and you know, we house 1,900 students, so you know, still small, but we have, you know, a large international population and, you know, a national population, which is part of that decision. But I think that's another way to look at it. It's not easier necessarily, but.
Like, I'll say fortunate to be down to only 50 rooms that actually have keys. So I'm so happy about that. But when we had more, like our open apartments and stuff like that, we used to plug them during the breaks. So even if the students did come back and try to put their key in there, they couldn't because all they were doing was pushing the plug further in there. And you have to have a certain tool to get that plug out. But I will tell you from a facility standpoint and from my fingers, they're annoying. But they work like amazing. Because you can't get into the lock unless you actually have a certain tool to get that plug out. So And that
We've
prevented us
used
from
those.
collecting keys, so.
We've used those too. Not every time. We use them more for like specific reasons, but we have those. Those things are a beast. Like you're gonna break a door handle
Right.
to get in because you're not gonna get that thing out. I would maybe do like talk when you're talking to your higher ups, have like your numbers of how many lock core changes you have to do because of the key inventory and collection of key process, and how like for example last year we had 4 lock core changes that were needed at the end of winter break. Like 4 people lost their keys, but they also notified us before they showed up. So we had locks keys ready to go when they got here. But like it's financially expensive to change a bunch of lock cores.
Yeah, it's hard because the person who's the most abstinent, I guess I would say the most sort of against it, kind of comes at it from not like the most rational place. So they just say, well, if you want to change, you can, but my gut says that, you know, this is really icky and something awful is going to happen. So you're like, oh, I don't want to change it. If, you know, and then have kind of a, I told you, it could just lends itself to an I told you, which is not a professional kind of response, but it's just the nature of sometimes they're who we're dealing with. But yeah, and it's hard because my team is definitely like, let's not do it. Because they see the work on the REs, and then we have to hand them back out in spring. The benefit is it does help us see who is coming back. So we do know if we have a high list of non-enrollments, it is helpful to know who actually returned to their space from winter break. So if we had a lot of no-shows, that does help with that. So there's pluses and minuses to it, but I would like to see us move to not collecting keys. Thank you.
Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? Otherwise, you get 6 minutes back of your day. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in November.